Thank Alex and Mariana for having me here to give the talk. My name's Tim Brandt. I'm an iOS developer, just started over at Earbits, and I want to talk to you guys about UI testing. So who here has used UI testing so far? Okay, a couple people, cool. So this is basically just a brief overview. So I guess for you guys, you might be bored to tears, but for the rest of you, what I'm hoping to show is that this stuff's pretty simple. It's really helpful, and there's really no reason that we can't be using it in our projects. So the first question is, why automated tests? Obviously, we're programmers. As we develop our app, we're always making the same repetitive tests manually. It's much easier just to automate it once, and you have it forever. Save money on QA. Make some more time just to focus on edge cases. More time to solve interesting problems, and because it's pretty cool stuff. So for me, previously, I did some automated testing stuff 2 years ago. I was basically tasked with sort of like the silver bullet of coming up with integration tests for mobile when I worked at a previous company. And while I did come up with a solution, it was very brittle. I found, at least 2 years ago, I found Appium to be pretty brittle. Lots of steps, lots of layers. It almost felt like building kind of a Rube Goldberg machine. You have all these layers like stacked on top of each other. So basically UI testing is native to Xcode, so it's a little bit easier in that regard. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through the main set of objects and just concepts you need for UI testing. So the first is the application object. So this basically launches your application. You can pass in arguments. You can set the environment. And this gives you all the access to all the UI elements on the screen. And the way you do that is via element queries. So basically, an element query is an unresolved reference to an element. So basically, until you resolve it, it's just a formula to find an element. It doesn't guarantee that it exists, obviously. You retrieve it from the application object. So the application object has a bunch of lists of different UI objects by type. So cells, static text, tables, you name it. So it's really convenient to look and find objects that way. It's also compatible with NS predicate, which is really handy for making any generic search for objects on the screen or anything that fits like given attribute settings, anything like that. So finally, you get to element objects themselves. So the result of a query hands you back an element object, and that's what you actually interact with. So that's the resolved object. You can access its state information. You can check, does this button exist? Is this object hittable? Then you can perform all of your interactions: tap, swipe, touch, type text, all that good stuff, and simulate your interactions. So who already is doing unit testing in XCTest? So who uses assertions in XCTest? Wow, is that it, really? Okay, well, for all four of you, these will look familiar. They're the XCTest assert statements. So the good news is they're the same in UI tests. So same exact workflow of asserting a certain state in your test. So the good news is nothing to change there. So there's no excuses to start doing UI testing. So I want to say one more. I want to show an example just to hit home the idea of query object versus an element. So one thing, if you want to test that a certain element exists on a screen, so in this case a button, you might be tempted just to use apps.button name submit query and just assert that that's not nil, right? That exists. That actually will always return true because the query always returns an object. So actually the proper way to assert that something exists is you have to actually resolve the object, and you do that by adding the exists. So that actually resolves the query. So another way we can retrieve objects is by setting accessibility IDs. So who here is familiar with accessibility? So a couple people. So basically, I think Mariana has some experience with this, but basically it's a way for impaired users of your app to have the screen reader read the content. So and that's for the accessibility label, right? So they.
Yeah. So we were talking about that earlier. You want to try to use the identifier for your UI tests and leave the label for the screen reader. This way, you can use some sort of naming pattern for your IDs for your testing, and then still have the screen reader do things that are like set by either your product owner, your marketing director, whoever it is that's deciding what the most user-friendly thing is.
Yeah, so basically you can set it in the storyboard. In this case, I'm setting the label. But as Mariana says, that would be a more human-readable name, and then the ID would be for your code. You can retrieve like a hierarchy of all the elements and their accessibility names using app.debug description. And yeah, as I said, you can query the element directly with the name next to a query. So another way to check the accessibility is the accessibility inspector. So if you go to the Xcode developer tool, there's this inspector. When you open it up, basically anything you hover over, it's going to give you all this metadata about whatever object it's over. So part of that is it has the accessibility title. So sometimes that's helpful. And last but not least, as I mentioned, you can query elements with an NS predicate. So the question is, why do we need NS predicate if we already have accessibility IDs? Well, maybe you have legacy code that doesn't have accessibility IDs, or you're unable to change the name, or maybe you want to target various collections based on parameters, et cetera, et cetera. So the next thing you might be wondering, where to start. The good news is, who's seen the WWDC talk on this, on UI testing? Quite a few people. So you see they have a record function. I'm just going to show you guys that really quick, just show you how easy it is to figure out what elements are. So real quick. So basically, I have a test scene here. Oh, wrong screen. Here we go. Sorry about that. All right, so I have a test scene here with basically an empty test. In setup, I am just launching the UI application, and no one look at this sleep state. So basically, we'll just set a breakpoint, open the app. Okay, so this opens the app, hits our breakpoint, and from here we can hit the record button and just start playing around and seeing what we got. So I'm going to click this. Get some cool music. You can see that it shows you the query. It's getting it from tables, other elements, accessibility, and we did a tap operation. Let's play here. Sorry. I'm going to get to that in a second. So we're using live server data, which isn't always the best. Well, it's not always the best idea with tests, but so basically you have that. Go to the artist. Go back. All right. So basically what we have, and it's weird. It'll just Xcode's really strange about where it sticks this code. It just kind of throws it anywhere. So you got to copy and paste it wherever you want it. So we're gonna throw this in demo. Okay, so we basically get some code to start with for our test. So, yes?
I'm pretty sure just a little hint. So run the simulator without the breakpoint, put the insertion point where you want the code, then then hit record, then start interacting with the simulator, and it'll record your user interaction, and it'll insert the code exactly where you want it.
Oh, great. You need the cursor. Just put the cursor there. Just click on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit record, and then put the cursor there, hit record, then start using the simulator.
Okay. Thanks for the tip. So basically, let's play back our code.
So what do you do when the record button's not clickable?
Not clickable?
Yeah.
You know, that happened to me
I've never
recently.
seen that work.
It happens a lot.
It happened to me today, and I'm trying to think of how I fixed it.
It might be that your target is wrong. So you might have a UI test. The unit test target instead of UI test target. So it treats those files differently.
Schema's not right.
Yeah. So you gotta add another test target in order to get that working. So the usual unit test target is not gonna run this. So if you're gonna, this is
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the right target though.
I did see that explanation. I think it was just like a clean reopen thing. Well, that's unfortunate. I think we have a really fast network because our fast server connection was hoping that it would fail on us, but let's try it again. So for those of you who missed it, let's play it again. All right, so basically we didn't have any issues here, but what I wanted to get at is obviously when you're switching screens, things are asynchronous, and sometimes you got to wait for elements, so sometimes it'll fail because you're trying to click buttons that aren't there yet. So one thing that's helpful is just to put like wait for commands. So basically, we just want to make sure that this tile exists before we tap on it. Whoops, variables are come in handy. And we can just put wait for statement. So basically all this will do is it'll wait 10 seconds for the object to appear before failing. So the other thing I want to show, let's actually take a look at tagging and accessibility ID. So just stop right here. Let's run it one more time. Okay, so basically what I want to show you guys, so for here, we want to just look at the full tree of objects. This is where you can print your debug description, so kind of just an insane jumble of the hierarchy, all the objects and their labels. Maybe what's a little more reasonable is to print list of objects by type. So here's all the cells. So something to note here is it'll show you a bunch of metadata about the query, but the actual object it found is always put in this output struct here. So, and you can see the label. So whatever the label is, this is the accessibility label. So it's just a way to check that out. So cells, obviously another popular one is static text. So here's the text on the screen. You can search for things by element. So let's see, it's static text. All right, so first one, you guys get it. Yeah, that's about it.
How do you find that accessibility inspector thing you're talking about?
Yeah,
Like,
let's look at that.
Use it at this point, or?
Yeah, sure. So let's try it. So watch this. Bet you didn't know about this. Boom.
Well, so you just hover over it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
And so see, it says album row cell is the accessibility name.
Is it just for
You
the
can't
label?
actually read that.
Yeah, sorry. You have to take my word for it. I promise. Swear to God. Favorites. Is there a way to make the text bigger? Probably not. You can run up here and verify for yourself. So you get the idea, right? That comes in handy. So let's look at a bigger flow. Let's actually go back to the slides. So obviously this was the wait for element to appear method. Just gives a timeout until the object appears. Yeah, so let's look at a bigger flow in the app. Just reset the scene. You know what? I'm going to delete derived data just to make sure that nothing goes wrong here. Lost my cursor. There it is. Okay, so let's look at a bigger test of a flow. This needs to re-index. This is when the music comes in handy.
You can open up the file so
Yeah.
from the Project Explorer.
What'd you say?
You can open up the file from Project Explorer.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually. Okay, so here's an example of. So this is a test of a bigger flow. So let's just run it and then we'll walk through it. This project's not updated to Swift 3 yet, so it's a little slow to build.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Have you thought of having these codes outside of the app repository?
Outside of the app?
Yeah.
Not really, because it lives in the Xcode project. It's kind of part of the project.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, the other way of doing things with Appium was kind of more external, where you're using like the app build,
Right.
and you have external scripts, so that kind of makes more sense. But this is like pretty coupled with Xcode, so I think it just kind of stays with the project. But all right, so sorry for the wait. This is basically just going to make a playlist, types in the name. So if you're working on this feature, you'd probably be doing this by hand, like over and over and over as we do. So then it's going to add a few tracks to the playlist. Get some more music. now it's going to check and make sure that the playlist has 3 tracks. So, all right. Test is green. We are good to go. So let's take a look at this test. So basically, open the app object. We have some go-to methods, that go to the right place in the app, and then we have verification methods. So basically, everything's modular, and never assumes that it knows where it came from. So we have go-tos, and we have methods just to ensure that we're at the right place. So in this case, maybe not the most robust, but we can pretty much assume if it says My Music, we're on the My Music page. Method to expand the playlist view. So in this case, it's a table, and if the table doesn't have height, it's unexpanded. And in that case, we want to click it to expand it. We set a number of tracks, and then we have a method to add tracks to the playlist. It just basically loops through and does that. It's querying the buttons using the accessibility IDs. Then we go to the playlist view. So same thing. I don't think there's anything too interesting here. And then basically we verified the playlist view count. So this is where XC assert comes into play. So let's actually go to that view, and then I'll just show you how I'm checking that. Oh, I guess we don't have the playlist anymore. So basically, this is an empty playlist, but basically we know that the number of cells is the number of tracks, so we check that. And then I'm using an NS predicate because this label will say how many tracks there are. So basically I'm using an NS predicate to find the label that starts with number of tracks. And then I'm comparing that label with a string number of tracks where I insert the number of tracks that we added. So that's just an example of an assert there. So pretty simple, right? Makes sense? Okay, so all right, so we've seen some examples, some tests. So just some coverage ideas, different ways you can write your tests. I mean, basically you have a UI test for each flow, each feature of your app, however you define that. One idea that I thought was cool is if you get in a routine where for every ticket you have a UI test for your acceptance criteria. So basically that's the BDD model that Alex loves. So you could basically write a high-level methods for your acceptance criteria before you start the ticket, and that would be your BDD. So when you're done, you have a UI test that basically demonstrates your feature. So lastly, so you saw obviously a network error. So obviously we don't want to be testing apps with live data. So the way we get around this is we create a mock server and stub the endpoints. A couple years ago when I did this, I had a solution that was external. So basically, I had a Ruby script that was using a gem called Mimic, and it would just serve up like static JSON to port 8080. And then you could just change like the base name of your URL. So you're basically serving yourself just like static JSON. In this case, recently I was looking at another solution that's dependency injection. So you basically internally can just inject mocks the same way. So however you do it. This is a good reference for that, by the way. And this is, oops, sorry. This last link was a good reference for that. So lastly, you want to obviously run your UI tests on some sort of CI. We've been using Device Farm, and it's really cool because you can test your app on multiple devices. So you can pick all iOS 9, on all these iPads, whatever, and it'll test them. You get nice pass-fail reports. You get screenshots, videos of the tests. They have a fuzz test option also that just kind of randomly stress tests the app. It's like a robot just bashing on all the buttons. It's pretty cool. That's about it. So this is just meant to be just a quick overview, mostly for people who either weren't aware of UI testing or haven't really started playing with it yet. Just to kind of encourage everyone that it's pretty simple, just to kind of jump in. I'm hoping to come back and do another talk a little bit deeper on like CI and Device Farm and some more about process of using it. So hopefully maybe in a couple months or something. So, and
Is Device Farm pretty similar to Jenkins?
it's not really similar to Jenkins. I mean, I wouldn't call Device Farm like a full CI solution. It's really just, you basically just upload, you just upload the IPA and run it on the devices. So, I think it's something that you would hook into Jenkins, right?
Right, you could like go from Jenkins and then build out to this.
Exactly. So I think Jenkins would just basically send an IPA to Device Farm with some sort of recipe, So honestly, I haven't gotten that far yet, so that's why I want to hook this into CI. I was just playing with this manually, like just sending an IPA and seeing how it does. It's pretty awesome. So
what's the pricing? Have you ever are the devices stable? Are they real devices behind the cloud, or?
I'm pretty sure they're real devices, as I understand it. But I'm actually not sure. We can look it up on Amazon. Any other questions? Yeah.
So going back to sorry.
Oh, sorry.
My question was more on the AWS. Are you sending your code to them, or are you just pushing it from where you're at locally?
I'm trying to think of how they handle the builds.
Because if you're having your tests inside your own project.
Yeah, you send the project. Oh,
You're sending the IPA and the whole project.
I think you give it the GitHub repo. I actually don't remember offhand.
Like, what are you giving to AWS for this device farm? Are you giving them all your code? You're obviously have to give them your tests.
Yeah.
Let's just
Yeah,
look.
that's a good question. We actually were talking about this earlier today, and we were going to have Tim back for another talk beginning of the year. So probably go over that then, which is a long time from now. So probably, I don't know, I would say we'll have your information up on the meetup site afterwards if you guys want to reach out, if you're interested in more information on the AWS setup. We can definitely make that available.
Let's talk, or email me and I can send it to you. Yep.
I used UI test probably 6-8 months ago, and it was very widely. And so what about more complicated cases, like for example, table when you need to scroll and find some cell somewhere? What about case like alert, standard alert about permissions, about locations and such things? Is it fixed or it's not possible to use right now as well? Before it was impossible, for example, tap on some button on this standard alert about permissions. Or it was very hard to scroll table to find exactly cells. It was very, let's say so easy. It was different workarounds, special workarounds.
Yeah, I haven't done much of that. I haven't gotten that deep yet with UI testing. I did some of that.
All alerts and alerts work no problem. There's a special interruption UI interrupter. We have to implement that function of interrupt alerts. Any alert of earlier condition will be interrupted that one.
Okay, now it was because before it was interrupted as well, but it
never had a problem with that.
So right now we just cover simple cases, right?
I do, yeah. I haven't really gotten that deep. I know I had some issues with Appium with table scrolling and stuff like that. I found, you basically, you had to go through the accessibility IDs at the end of the day. But I know dealing with apps that are paginated, it's kind of a little tricky, like how the slide works to get it.
Yes, it was tricky and sometimes it was not possible. Have you ever think about testing exactly screen. Because right now it's something like open first screen, then navigate to second, next, until you find correct screen. Do you think about way to somehow open exactly screen?
Oh, you mean just open right to a certain view? Yeah.
Yeah, you may do unit tests for that stuff. So you can in XUtest stand up a view controller and then basically trigger its life cycle, and then you would have a screen. The only thing you won't see it. I mean, it's not going to be like a UI test. It's going to be plain old XUtest. But then you will have access to all views, through outlets, and everything, so you can test.
Like unit test.
You can unit test as a view controller. So you can literally like load it in memory, put it
Yeah,
in.
but it's not, let's say, not UI test. No.
You will not, yeah, it is not the UI test. So in order to get to specific section of the screen, I mean, you can probably come up with some sort of clever ways to launch, because that's what you had in your presentation, where you hook up this mock server through launch options. So you might explore that route, because you can start the UI view test app with certain options. And then your code, you can say, okay, it starts with this option, then go to the screen. So you can, at least tackle it that way.
Yeah, I think if you're using mock data, there's, I mean, not really waiting for anything. You just have methods that go straight to whatever screen you're going to test. Shortcut methods.
And I say, like, it really depends on what you want to test. The UI test is going to be more of an integration test generally. It's going to be more of a test where you're testing the flow.
Yeah.
If you want a class test of a specific piece of logic, I think what Alex was suggesting is pull that logic and go to class and do a unit test on it. And that's going to be something that you can test much faster, right? If you want to just test the flow, then UI testing is the way to go. If you want quick test of a certain piece of logic, pull it out into class and send that to unit test it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, for quick iteration and development, you're going to be writing unit tests. This is just to test the full flow, right?
Yeah. Different things for different purposes.
But it's also a nice high level.
Right. UI test you can use not only for flow test, but you have different cases. That you
Yeah.
want to test. Yeah, for sure you can use for flow testing, but it's just
Also, I mean, it's
20% of.
also a nice, just high level regression test, right? It just kill a lot of birds with one stone, just testing that everything's working on all the devices. And then
Okay, and the last one question, is it available any kind of, coverage, just to check coverage? What is
testing coverage?
Yeah, something like this.
I'm actually not sure about that. Is there testing coverage here?
Garo is your man, talk to Garo.
Yeah. So test coverage is a tool that you can enable in Xcode. I didn't look into it myself, but you can find Garo.
Garo, yeah.
He looked into it. I can hook you up with him if you want to.
I mean, I know what works for you, but I'm not sure what you like.
Yeah, so you just edit the scheme and you say gather coverage data, and then once you run your tests, there'll be like a little thing where you can click.
So it's exactly the same for UI test. Right?
So-
for unit test,
so
for everything.
Coverage is just something that gets gathered. So in your scheme, you edit it, you say gather coverage data, and then the test run, where all your tests are showing pass fail, you click on this other thing and it shows your coverage data. And
All right, let's do a couple more questions, and we will go to the next phase.
Okay. Yep.
Did you guys try to run different schemes and order of execution in Device Farm? Because we currently have a problem that we have like hundreds tests in the main scheme, and we have separate like 6 schemes that run a part of like some blocks of those tests, not all of them. And so Device Farm currently not support this thing, so if you like say run this schema for this 10 tests, not all 100 tests, so they can grab this test, so they can see the schema of your target, and they grab wherever's the target, like attached to this target, and run everything
Oh.
this target. So it's
that deep. Sorry. You're on your own, man. Good luck.
I'm trying to look for an app we both know. I know, for instance, Instagram or Yelp. Say you would start from scratch and you want to implement UI tests and you want to have almost 100% coverage for say Yelp. How long would that take you?
How long would that take you?
Yeah, to implement that.
I have no
I would
idea.
say they're still doing it right now.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah.
Have 100% coverage.
Well, say to 90%. I'm hoping someone say, oh, I can do it in a day or in a week, or if you say you forever, well, then I will not go start doing this.
And the other question is, do you want 100% coverage?
Yeah.
Like, do you really want to have 100% coverage of tests in your app, or do you want to, like, and it's a philosophical question, right? Do you want to have 100% coverage, or do you want to have the most important parts of your app with heavy coverage, and then leave the rest kind of flexible?
Alright, well, how
Yeah.
long would it take you to provide coverage for the most important parts of the app? Is it a matter of days or weeks?
I have no idea. I mean, I think what you're getting at is how quick is the cycle to write tests? I mean, I don't think it's bad. I think it's pretty fast in my experience. I mean, I started looking at this last week, and it took me about a week to just write tests to cover most of the main flows in their little app. It wasn't too bad. You think once you have them, you know, time well spent.
So, you guys have gotten asked a lot of questions, and
Okay.
now we're going to kind of flip it around and start asking you guys questions. But first, let's thank Tim for coming in and being
Thanks.
amazing support. Thank you. And we'll put his information up on the meetup site along with the video of tonight's talk. So if you want to reach out, please reach out. Let's do a quick break, but when we come back, we have some questions to ask you, some